What's going on, everybody? This is Jeff with Living in Arizona, and today we are going to talk about the places to avoid when moving to Arizona. So I realize there's going to be some people who are going to watch this video who are not going to be happy if they see their city on this list. I also am making this video because I see a lot of people with some misguided information. They're talking about going to some places that are not necessarily places they should be considering unless they're aware of the fact that there are some reasons not to go there. Sometimes the best way to even find out information about the city that you're thinking about moving to is just go online and read some of the forum posts from people who live there. Now, you'll notice that every place in America is going to have a problem with people who did not like the country or the city, right? So there's always going to be people who don't like it, but you'll notice that there are some places that have an absolute just a lot of people who did not like that place. And that's what we're going to go over in this video. So if you're excited for this video, crush up the likes. And also, this is also a time where you can ask questions in the comments below, or you can join our group, which is going to have a link in the description. You can join our group on Facebook. So let's go ahead and get started. So pretty much the one that keeps coming up where people are always kind of like, hey, how is it over here? How is it over there? It's Kingman. Okay, so I realize there are going to be people who are going to say, why are you hating on Kingman? And there's going to be people in this group who are going to be from Kingman. Kingman, if you really do the research, you'll be surprised. There's a lot of people who do not like living in Kingman. They'll say avoid it. I mean, it's nothing more than a pit stop to Las Vegas for a long time now. And now there's some cheap land up there. So people are moving over there and trying to retire. And I'll tell you why Kingman is not a great place to go. Is number one is in the summer it gets really hot and there's nothing to do there and it's kind of in a dust bowl. Number two, in the winter it gets really frozen tundra cold, like wicked cold. And number three is it's just there's nothing really to do there. I mean, it's a podunk. It's not the place to be. So I'm going to put that at the top of the list for places that people should avoid. It's not necessarily the worst place in Arizona, but it's a place that a lot of people are thinking it's so great when it's really not. And that's just the cold hard truth about Kingman. I apologize if I upset anyone, but Kingman, I'm going to say no as of right now. And I hope I'm wrong because I've seen gentrification take place in certain areas where places turn a corner. But Kingman, I don't think is there yet. So if you're thinking about moving to Kingman, I would think, again, do a little bit more research, read the forums, ask questions. Another place that people keep kind of showcasing or wanting to talk about is Bullhead City. Bullhead City is right there on the Colorado River. You go to Bullhead City, you're like, wow, this is kind of nice. Look across the river, there's Laughlin. Yeah, but guess what? It's got a huge methamphetamine problem, and there's not a lot to do there. But it does have some beautiful areas. But overall, I would say that if you're moving there, you might want to consider looking elsewhere. Bullhead City. It looks like a cool place, but it just doesn't have what it needs right now. So I'm going to add Bullhead City to the list of number 2 place, okay, to kind of just avoid. Just do yourself a favor and avoid it. Now, believe it or not, Phoenix Metro has a couple places that you're going to want to probably avoid. And I would say right off the top, Phoenix, just the city of Phoenix. So obviously there's Phoenix Metro, which is pretty big, right? It's urban sprawl. We've got beautiful suburbs that you would want to live in, like Gilbert and Chandler and some of those other areas. But Phoenix itself, in particular around central Phoenix, there's maybe one place in Phoenix. There's a couple places in Phoenix that are okay. There's Arcadia, which is good, the Biltmore area, but expensive. And then there's like the Paradise Valley area and then like far north Phoenix. But outside of that, for the most part, if you look at the FBI's crime statistics and whatnot, the city of Phoenix is actually not doing too good. I mean, it's just not the safest place. And it's not the great of quality of life. You got places like Central Phoenix, Sunny Slope, and, areas like that around Moon Valley, which is okay. But if you're moving to Phoenix, you're moving to Phoenix Metro, not to Phoenix City. Phoenix City is not that safe. And then outside of Phoenix, there's another town that you definitely want to avoid, even more so than Phoenix. It's called Tolleson. So Tolleson, for the most part, is a city that you just absolutely want to avoid if you can. It's like I said, I mean, I'm not here to hate on anyone or any city in Phoenix. I mean, overall, crime statistics across the nation are down. Overall quality of living is up. So, I mean, even a place like Tolleson isn't as bad as like Skid Row in Los Angeles, but it's a place you probably won't want to end up if you can avoid it. So Tolleson, not that, I don't know. We'll just leave it at that, okay? Tolleson you'd want to avoid. Another one that's probably we're staying away from in terms of crime statistics is Glendale. A lot of people, they think, oh, well, the Cardinals play in Glendale, so it must be this really awesome place. But I would avoid staying away from Glendale. I see all your comments. Jeff Rush, what's up? Halloween Jack, Michael Steiner, and Clara Burton. My thoughts on Mesa. I'll get around to Mesa after I finish this list. That's a good question right there. Thank you for asking, Clara. And I will be answering some more questions. And thank you to the 7 people who crushed up the likes and the 42 people who are already watching. So as we keep this list going, I just mentioned Tolleson, Glendale, and Phoenix in the metro area. Now, if we move down to Tucson, Tucson is nice north of University of Arizona. You go north of University of Arizona, if you just took a straight line and you just went north, we're talking Catalina Foothills or North Tucson, it's good. But you'll notice if you start looking at the data and the crime statistics and just the overall quality of life, South Tucson, you don't want to end up in that area. Even downtown Tucson, it's not terrible. It's just there's no culture, no feeling, no energy. And even in downtown Tucson, it's kind of just boring. They have to do a real big gentrification. I mean, it can happen, but that's a place that really could use some life is downtown Tucson and South Tucson. It's just places you just wouldn't want to move to. And the reason I say that is because if you're over in, Memphis, Tennessee, and you're thinking about moving to Arizona and you're just looking online and you're like, all right, I just want to get a place over there. I found a place for rent in one of these towns. It's $700 a month. Well, this is why I'm making this video is because, yeah, you want to stay away from these places because even if the prices are great, because you'll end up getting there and you'll end up regretting that you come here. And then you'll be like that person who says, Phoenix sucks, Arizona sucks, I got to get the heck out of here. Because this is what happens. People move to the wrong area and they hate it. It's what do they say? Location is everything. Location, location, location. So that's why we're making this video. It's not to pick on places. It's just saying this is where the highest percentage of people who move here do not enjoy their time while they're in Arizona if they move to these places. There are beautiful places in Kingman that, you know, if you got a house right there at the base of the foothill and you got like a castle that overlooks the whole valley, I'm sure life could be pretty decent, I guess. Even in Bullhead City, if you got a house right there on the Colorado River, it could be okay. If you got a big old house up there on South Mountain in Phoenix, it might be all right. Or even if you got a big house, in South Tucson, could be good. But at the end of the day, you want to stay away from those places, right? Overall, in general. Now, there's also some other places that I'm going to mention around Arizona that you may want to consider staying away from. Nogales. Nogales is a hot zone because it's right there on the border. It's not that Nogales isn't cool. I'll go to Nogales to visit. But as far as living in Nogales, we're talking it's a hot zone. And it's not necessarily the safest place because of, its proximity to, the crime that's coming or the cartels bringing over that's a entry point into the United States, Nogales. So the closer you are to Nogales, the closer you are to the problems. Now, where do you kind of get close to Nogales where you're still kind of safe? Remember, Nogales is a beautiful place. I'd live there. It's on the border, and that's a hot zone. Whether you like it or not. Some people would say, well, what about Sierra Vista? Well, Sierra Vista is close to that area, so it is vulnerable to some of that, but it's a nice place. It's not terrible. All right, so some other places that you may want to avoid in between Phoenix and Tucson, there's a place called Eloy. So if you can, steer clear of Eloy. Okay, that's another one of those places that you probably aren't going to want to go to. And then I've seen some people, they're asking about Florence, Coolidge, Eloy, Picacho. I would say no, not right now. It's not. I would recommend against going to Coolidge, Eloy, and Picacho unless you absolutely love being really far away from everything and being like in the middle of a dust bowl. When it gets windy in Arizona, that whole area in that valley there, that's it's like a wind region. It's on the Gila River. So people asking, oh, should I move to Florence, Coolidge? Florence is also home to the Arizona State Penitentiary. So if you're thinking about moving to Florence, just be aware that that's where the Arizona State Penitentiary is. That's where they keep the hardest of the hard prisoners. But it's, there's some movement moving forward, but you get the same house in Gilbert, big house, 2,000 square feet, nice big backyard with a pool. Gilbert, I don't know, maybe 350,000. In Florence, 230,000. That's why it's right there next to the penitentiary, and it's also not a very awesome area to be in. It's okay, but it's not that great. So I've gone through most of these this list here, I can answer some questions. So if you need to watch this video when you're looking, look at the map, see where these places are. The further away you are from each one of these places, the happier you'll be. There's a couple other areas that you may want to avoid, but those are like the real hot zones. I mean, I don't really hear people trying to move to Gila Bend, but I could add Gila Bend to the list. But I've never had anyone on this channel say, hey, Jeff, should I move to Gila Bend? It's not anything against Gila Bend. It's just like, have you been to Gila Bend? Like, there's nothing in Gila Bend. It's really hot. Go to Gila Bend in the summertime and try to chill out in Gila Bend. And you'll be like, okay, I see what you're saying. It's kind of like Quartzsite. People are moving to Quartzsite. I would say the same thing about Quartzsite, but people go there because they've got this, they've created this culture there of RVs, but there's really nothing in Quartzsite. If you ever get a chance, when you're driving to California, go down the highway and stop in Quartzsite for a minute and say, oh, so this is where people are moving. So, all right, I'm going to answer some questions here. Gilbert versus Oro Valley. Okay, Rick, Travis, good question. So Gilbert, you can't really compare Gilbert and Oro Valley in the same context because Oro Valley has this beautiful Catalina Mountain in the backdrop. Gilbert is more like a flat valley. Nightlife is better in Gilbert. Scenic views are better in Oro Valley. Both are really safe. Both are comparable in pricing. You know, it's just the difference is you're going to have more room to breathe in Oro Valley. In Gilbert, you know, at night, you get to see a whole bunch of beautiful red lights when you're on the road, if you know what I'm saying, red tail lights. It's really crowded in Gilbert, but Gilbert is safe. It's affluent. It's one of the best suburbs in all of America. Oro Valley is up and coming, but it's more spread out. It's more room to breathe. They're comparable. They're both great. They're probably the top two places you'd want to consider moving to in Arizona, Gilbert or Oro Valley. You know, you might have two Sedona's in there as a sought after destination. I mean, it's just depends on what you want, what you like. But yeah, so that's Oro Valley versus Gilbert. They're not really comparable, but at the same time, they're both kind of like up there on the same pedestal. Thank you to the 22 people who crushed up the likes. We have 60 people watching. So Apache Junction, 55 plus mobile home parks. Apache Junction could almost be on this list, but it's not. Apache Junction has one thing that I really like about it. It's the Superstition Mountains. Just the sight of the Superstition Mountains is really beautiful. That's something that when you wake up to it, it's really nice. But Apache Junction in particular is a tough area. It's a tough, there's a lot of locals there that are kind of stuck in their ways. It's a really, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying that when you're coming from outside, if you're coming from out of state and you're trying to settle in Apache Junction, you know, you could be looked at in a different light. Okay. So you guys were asking about Mesa. Mesa is got some areas that are really good and it's got some areas that are really tough. Central Mesa is a tough area. It's the closer you are to the light rail, the more tough the area is. The further away you get from the light rail, you go to East Mesa, you go to northeast Mesa towards Apache Junction or Red Mountain. It gets really nice. Okay, so that's my thought on Mesa. Mesa is not on this list as the worst places to live in Arizona or the places that you should avoid. Remember, crime in America has actually been downtrending for a couple years now, and overall quality of life has been going up despite the animosity and the rift between the people, you know, between the polarity of different views. But overall, America is getting safer and it is getting higher quality of life, believe it or not. But at the same time, you know, these are still places that in this day and age you might want to avoid. And if you just missed this video, you might want to watch it again when I went over the list. But let's see, I'm still answering questions. Okay, so you guys are asking about Prescott. So you're saying Prescott versus what? Kingman? I would take Prescott any day of the week, even if the prices were a little bit more. I just couldn't see myself in Kingman, period. Kingman was on this list of places that you should avoid. People asking about Tombstone gunfights. Tombstone's one of the most more peaceful places you could live. It's a former ghost town, but it's pretty peaceful. I mean, the old days of the Wild West gunfights in Tombstone, those are kind of behind us. Let's see here. Casa Grande. So people are asking about Casa Grande. There's another city that's kind of come up, that Casa Grande and Maricopa. And I've talked to people who live out in Casa Grande and Maricopa, and they both like it. So Maricopa kind of just came out of nowhere, and so did well, Casa Grande's been there, but Casa Grande and Maricopa are two places that have kind of come up. Maybe 15, 20 years ago, Maricopa would have been on this list. Casa Grande maybe would have been on this list, but because of even Buckeye would have maybe been on this list. So, the cities that are on this list, 20 years goes by, gentrification happens. The next thing you know, these are towns and cities that have turned the corner. It's just current, present day, 2020, right now. These are places you wouldn't want to go. Lake Havasu City is better than Bullhead City. It's on the Colorado, and it's a pretty good place. It's not the greatest place, but it's okay. Oh, wow. David Welker says St. David, Pomeranian, Safford, Sierra Vista are nice. Yeah, you're down there in Cochise County, down in southeast Arizona. And I haven't been out there. Levine's okay. Levine's okay. It's West Phoenix. West Phoenix is not going to be as sought after as East Phoenix. East Phoenix, and believe it or not, one of the more challenging places to be in the Phoenix metro area is Tempe. So Tempe's, it's something about Tempe has created it's got actually some of the highest crime rates in the state. Tempe does, even at the top 100 in the nation, I believe. So it's just it's crazy, but that's the only place in like East Phoenix that's kind of iffy is Tempe. But once you get outside of Tempe, you head into Chandler, you go to Albuquerque, Guadalupe, and you go towards Gilbert. You're in North Mesa. The part of Mesa that's kind of iffy is the part that's closer to Tempe. So just really interesting to hear that. Parts of Apache Junction. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, any of you guys are from around Arizona who could share some thoughts on Apache Junction? People are like, oh, I want to move to Apache Junction. You know why people want to move to Apache Junction? Because of that view of Superstition Mountain. But go hang out for about 2 days in Apache Junction and see if you really want to live there. It's not for everybody, but it's for some. Like I said, it's not on this list, but it could be. For some people, they might actually say, no, I could never live in Apache Junction. Now, the closer you get to the Superstition Mountains, they have nice homes out there. They have horse stables and they have ranches. It's really nice up there next to Apache Junction or Superstition Mountain. But that's like far east Apache Junction. Another place that you could probably say stay away from would be Globe in Miami. Globe in Miami, it's sometimes these places are on the list because the locals won't be too friendly to your kids or to you if you move there, and there might not be jobs too. And Globe Miami would be one of those places that it would be really hard to try and fit into a place like Globe in Miami, which you could also probably add Superior. It's not that they're bad places. It's just being from the outside, looking in, trying to get in there and, raise your kids. Kind of iffy out there in Globe Miami. Gold Canyon's a good place. Gold Canyon's a good place. You'd probably want to live out there. Jose Sanchez says Rio Verde is nice. Yeah, it is. Rio Verde is really nice. Rio Verde is far east, Scottsdale, north of Fountain Hills. And if you get a chance, go out to Rio Verde, Green River. That's what it means, right? It's on the Verde River. Not much to do. I can cope with. Crime is another issue, says Halloween Jack. I think you're talking about Apache Junction. We have a lot of homeless area in Mesa, says Clara Barton. Yeah. So Mesa does have that homeless population that kind of congregates all up and down the light rail system. Most of the people who ride the light rail are people who are homeless. It's just like the transportation for the homeless people, and they go up and down the light rail. So the closer you are to anywhere on the light rail. I've even talked to people in Scottsdale. Scottsdale now has a sign that says, do not give money to panhandlers. So in Scottsdale, they have a sign, don't give money to panhandlers. If you really want to give, they say give to the agencies that are helping the homeless. Now, obviously, that's a open-ended comment, concern, or question that people might have as well. Oh, so I could just make sure the CEO gets real big paydays. Why can't I just give the money directly to the homeless? Well, Scottsdale also doesn't want to build the light rail going north, because that's what happens is if they build the light rail, now they're bringing all the homeless people up into Scottsdale. So that's why they don't build it. But they don't really want homeless people in Scottsdale because, it's just they don't want them there. And yeah, I mean, the homeless thing is a real challenge. I don't know how I feel about it. Sometimes I feel sad about it. And then I'll talk to a homeless person who'll be like stalking me, asking me for money rudely and aggressively and like high on drugs and alcohol or whatever they're on. And then I'll be like, oh, dude, no, I don't really have any sympathy for that guy or that girl. But then I'll see some situations where I'm like, little kids or someone who really just fell on hard times who's in a hard position, and then I'll feel sad. So homelessness is a real tricky thing. It's like you got some people who are just homeless by choice and making the wrong decisions. And then you got people who are homeless because they fell on hard times who, it wouldn't hurt to give them a helping hand, right? So it's a tough one. Being honest, though, there are some nice areas around Apache Junction on the Mesa side and rural parts of Apache Junction, but avoid Apache Trail Main Street. Yeah, Apache Trail Main Street, that's the part, it's a little bit tougher down there. I mean, these are people that have been living there for a long time, and they don't actually want people from the outside moving there, but they are moving there. But yeah, if you go up against the mountains, like Usury Mountains or Superstition Mountains, Apache Junction can be real nice. It's just the main drag is kind of tough. Lala Ashley says, live in Signal Butte and Brown. It's nice, but I don't trust the random people around here. Okay. Okay, we got a comment about St. John's, Arizona. Move to St. John's in July. It's hard to find work, be accepted by the locals. Yeah, St. John's is I assume you're talking about the St. John's over there north of Eager and Springerville on the east side of Arizona where they have cheap land. So people who could be watching this channel right now could be on cheapland.com, or I think there's a website called billyland.com. And if you go on Billyland or you go on cheapland.com, you'll see there's some really cheap land. You can get like 30 acres for $30,000 in St. John's, Arizona. And by the looks of the pictures, it's these green pastures, beautiful, just like, you're like, wow, that's amazing. Well, then when you go out to St. John's, you're like, this is a really pretty place, but why is no one living out here? And then you start to find out there's some reasons for that. Some of them are because not so friendly locals, like the locals don't really look too fondly upon foreigners. Just kind of fuzzy eyeballs. That's what you might get out there in St. John's. But also there's no commerce. There's no jobs. I mean, if you're moving to some of these places like Bullhead City or Kingman, you better have some sort of income or some sort of money stored away, because there's not going to be jobs there. Unless you're trying to go into like geothermal energy in some of these places, or like hydroelectric energy or something like that, or maybe even mining, there's no real jobs out there outside of working at Circle K, McDonald's, the fast food joint, or something like that. St. John's, I mean, the only real economy in St. John's, tell me if I'm wrong, is like ranching. Opinions on the Verde Valley area, Cornville, Rimrock, Clarkdale, Camp Verde. Good question, Lala. That, I would say, is a good place. All those places, there's going to be some iffy areas around there where, Rimrock is kind of like the hills have eyes. That's right next to Montezuma's Castle. But, I mean, the Native Americans settled that area for hundreds of years before, Europeans and whatnot arrived there. But that whole area around the Verde Valley that you just mentioned, Verde Valley, Cornville, Rimrock, Clarkdale, Camp Verde, Cottonwood, you could add Cottonwood to that list. Sedona is even kind of in the Verde Valley area. It's all real nice. Just if you get a chance, go check out Cottonwood. Cottonwood's probably the biggest place there, and that whole Verde Valley is just it's going to take off at some point. I mean, it's got potential to be like Colorado Springs was. I'd look at the Verde Valley as something like what Colorado Springs was 40, 50 years ago. That's what the Verde Valley is. Sedona was never inhabited before the natives lived everywhere around it, and Sedona was a place of worship. Right. But Montezuma's Castle is really close to Rimrock, and Rimrock's a neighboring town to Sedona. I mean, Sedona, if you're saying like Sedona, like what is Sedona? Downtown Sedona? I mean, the whole area around there in Rimrock and Sedona is, you just see the red rocks. It's like where the Oak Creek begins. So the Oak Creek comes down through there, and you just see this big area from the Verde Valley of just these big red rocks all over the place. And that kind of just that geographical area is known as Sedona. And in there they have that Montezuma's Castle, and they have some other areas around there, Montezuma as well, where Native Americans did live. But they lived along the rivers. But isn't Bullhead City just across Laughlin where there's gaming? I'm assuming many Bullhead City residents work there. Bullhead, if you look at how small Laughlin is, it's really small. But people, yeah, I mean, there's still hotels and stuff that would be hiring people. And Laughlin doesn't really have any residential, but Bullhead City has all the residential. Yeah, you have a point. I mean, yeah, you know, the hotels and the casinos got to hire someone, right? So there's that. But I don't know. I don't know about Bullhead City. That's like saying living next to the Indian reservation is a good idea because they got a hotel casino and they need to have you know, I mean, it's like I don't know, kind of like one of those kind of things. Just because there's a hotel and gaming casino there doesn't necessarily. It's like Atlantic City, right? Like I went to Atlantic City. There's a bunch of hotels there. I mean, there's the old Taj Mahal, which is now the Hard Rock. There's all these hotels, but you just go like right off the boulevard in Atlantic City. So yeah, they're hiring people, but it doesn't mean that it's a great place to live, in my opinion. I'm in Lake Montezuma, and there is still divide of where the Red Rocks start. Right. I mean, the Red Rocks. I look at it from the way I see it by eye. Like that's great. The city planners went in there and they drew up some plans and everything, but the way I look at it is like there's where that area right there is Sedona. I know that Sedona proper is 10,000 people. It's a really small town. And then you've got like the village just south of it. And then you end up in Cornville. I wouldn't say Cornville is a part of the Sedona area, but that whole area of Verde Valley, and then there's Sedona, right? Oak Creek. So it's kind of iffy. It's really hard to explain unless you go. For the people who are watching, they're kind of trying to understand what we're talking about. But that Oak Creek Village, the Oak Creek Canyon area, Sedona, it's basically just red rocks that kind of just bring excitement to you because you're like, wow, that's really beautiful. Yeah, and actually getting hotels and stuff up there, it's not too expensive around the Verde Valley to get a hotel. I mean, it's expensive in Sedona, but that's it. You go south, you can find hotels all around there that aren't going to break the bank, maybe $100 to $120 a night, maybe even less sometimes. Like in Camp Verde, you can find some really, like you could stay in Camp Verde on a hotel. You could stay in Cottonwood and then just drive for 45 minutes to an hour to Sedona. I mean, that's not very far away. You're still in the area. Yeah, Lista says Cottonwood has an okay hotel. Yeah, there's no real resorts in Cottonwood or anything. They're more towards Sedona. Actually, the wine country in the Verde Valley was something that was really becoming something. So the village of Oak Creek, Canyon, Uptown, and West Sedona are all Sedona. Yeah, I mean, it's again, if we're talking by city limits, you know, then it's like we could be, you know, it's like city limits are going to be the official data source, but to the people who moved there, we're just like, that's Sedona, that whole area. So Page Springs is a wine country area. There you go. Is all of Litchfield a safe city to live in, or only parts of it like Peoria? Litchfield, it's not like super dangerous, but it's not the safest place. How about that? It's not even the safest place in West Phoenix. The safe places in West Phoenix actually is Buckeye and Northeast Peoria. Yeah. So everything in between, you got Litchfield, Goodyear. Goodyear is okay. Surprise is okay. It's not like it's neither safe or dangerous. You get it? So like Litchfield's neither safe or dangerous. It's just kind of like right in the middle of the row. You're not going to like get mugged like you would in some of these other places that maybe are not so safe at night, right? All right. Decent area north of Tucson, Catalina Foothills, Oro Valley, Dove Mountain. There's 3 areas right there that you might want to check out. So Dove Mountain, Catalina Foothills, Oro Valley, north of Tucson. You could even go a little bit further, but it's kind of real north of Tucson. They have like Catalina, which is where Biosphere 2 is. It's no man's land, but they've got homes they're building out there. No, Surprise is not very expensive. Surprise is probably in the top 50 percentile of affordable places to live in the Phoenix metro area. Ain't nowhere called safe, Tupac Shakur. There you go. Yeah, I mean, no place is safe, right? Like, where's the safest place? Oh, you know where a safe place is? Singapore. Singapore's pretty safe. Hong Kong. I always thought Hong Kong was really safe for a big city. Uh, Before the protests, everyone's saying don't go to Hong Kong, but I'm like, I could never really see how Hong Kong could be dangerous. Hong Kong has always been really safe. A lot of places in Asia are very safe, and even when they have protests, I mean, sometimes the greatest threat you'll have is going to be from the government, not from the people. Like it's a pretty safe place, most places in Asia, but Singapore is really safe. Um, so does Hong Kong. I don't know with the protests, but there are some places that are really safe. Oh, another place that I thought was really safe was Greece Islands. The islands of Greece, the Greek islands, I found those to be super safe. Santorini, Eos, Mykonos, those are some really safe places. Like I remember saying that to myself, like, wow, this place is safe. I don't go to a place and go, wow, I could just walk around here at night and not have to worry about anything. But I felt like that in the Greek islands. So if you're really looking for some safe place, there's some advice. There's some Switzerland's really safe. Switzerland's another place that's really safe. Anyways, I don't know how we got on that. Didn't know someone was building in no man's land. I think we've been building up with local real estate development, not Tucson area development. Yeah, I don't know. It's a good idea to live in Gilbert and to work in Phoenix at the same time. Yeah, I mean, you got to take the 202 to the 101 to I-10. So it takes maybe, depending on where you're at in Gilbert, however long it takes to get to the surface street to the freeway. I don't know, maybe an hour, maybe less than an hour. You could probably do it in 35 minutes, but it's also going to depend on how far away you are. Halloween Jack, or I mean, I'm sorry, how congested the traffic is and what time of day. Like I said, sometimes in Arizona you get like these pretty red lights, the tail lights of everyone. That's what someone said. Halloween Jack says the English spoil the Greek islands. Yeah. I mean, I've been keeping up with development in the San Pedro Valley. I'm not too familiar with the San Pedro Valley. That one I don't know much about. Arizona's a huge state. Like, I mean, it's a big state. We're not necessarily talking about in population, but in terms of size, Arizona's a pretty big state. It takes a while to get around Arizona, and that's going 75, 80 miles an hour because, they have some freeways out here where you can go 75. Another state that'll take forever if you're going left to right is Tennessee. Like, Texas is obviously the biggest one, right? But you go to Tennessee, you look at Tennessee and you're like, oh, it's such a small state. I'll just go from Nashville to Memphis. And then you find out it's 6 hours from Nashville to Memphis, and Nashville's right in the middle of it all. So if you're going east to west in Tennessee, it's a long state. But if you're going north to south, it's really small. Same thing like back east. You look back east, you look at Virginia, North Carolina, you're like, oh, this will be a breeze. Getting through Virginia takes a long time to go from like DC down south to through into North Carolina. You're like, man, that took forever because things they don't have those kind of super highway corridors, and it's lots of weaving in and out of traffic. But Arizona is one of those places where, or not just traffic, but hillsides. They got the Appalachians or the Smoky Mountains, or one of those mountain ranges over there. Arizona, you could probably go from Phoenix to Flagstaff, 3 hours? And then it takes maybe 2 hours to get from Phoenix to Tucson. So you could go from Tucson to Flagstaff in about 4 to 5 hours. But there are some areas that take a long time to go through. Like if you go towards like St. John's, for example, in Arizona from Phoenix, if you go from Phoenix to St. John's, you'll be doing lots of like cutbacks and, but it'll take you 5 to 6 hours to get there. But if you look on the map, you're like, that's not very far away to get to the White Mountains or St. John's. So just some interesting stuff. 41 people crushed up the likes. Thank you to everyone who crushed up the likes. And Arizona is the most biologically diverse place in the world, like 7 to 8 different types of ecosystems. Actually, Lala, that is a good point. But when I was in the Big Island of Hawaii, you guys can even research this. I think they said 11 of 12 climate zones. You go through 11 of 12 climate zones just on the Big Island alone. And that's more climate zones than you go through when you go from Alaska to Costa Rica. So the Big Island has that much diversity on a little island. It's the Big Island of Hawaii, but So Arizona having, you know, so much diversity. We have desert, we have alpine, you have all that, but we don't have tropical in Arizona. So that's one that's missing. All right, guys. So thanks to the 43 people who crushed up the likes, and thanks to everyone who watched. And we will see you guys next time. And also ask some questions and make some recommendations about videos that you'd like to see. I lived in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I loved it. Missed the tree, says Moni. Chattanooga is pretty nice. It's probably cold now. I don't think I could handle the cold in Chattanooga right now. So see you later, David. See you later, Jeff. And Alyssa, Lala, and Dan. All right, we'll see you guys later.